It's time for championship weekend, and we have everything that you need to get ready for it on this week's episode of the Indy Ball Report Podcast. Alrighty, we are back again, episode number 184 of the Indy Ball Report Podcast. I'm Nick, he's Will, and depending on how the situation works out, this may be a radically different way of doing the podcast this week, but unfortunately a necessary way for reasons that I suppose I shouldn't comment about at this time, but hopefully we'll be able to talk about later on. But yeah. It's an interesting week, both away from baseball and certainly in baseball.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week, and the important thing is no matter what, you still get us talking about some Indy Ball playoffs. Well, I guess except for the Atlantic League, we'll get underway shortly. Even though we know their matchups, crazy week in independent league baseball for sure.
It absolutely was. We have a lot of semifinals that went final this week. It was something that we mentioned last week, that we're going to have whole series played before we could even really talk about them or preview them. And unfortunately, that included probably the best series of the postseason so far in that past week. But we do get to take the advantage to talk on Friday now. So we are recording it as Friday. It should be up on Saturday. So that's the good news. It should be up before all the games come out. So we will be able to take a look at 3 of the league championship series that all conveniently begin on the 17th. And we'll be able to probably talk about how they all broke down next week and talk some Atlantic League playoffs next week. But that's all to come. What is more pressing, though, is before we get into postseason baseball, we do have some Jackal news. Because as all of you are probably familiar with at this point, the Jackals were leaving Yogi Berra Stadium. We reported, I guess about a month or so ago, that they would be going to Hinchcliffe Stadium in Patterson. Then I had mentioned slightly earlier in the week that I was starting to hear some rumblings, I guess the word on the street, but not word from, sources that told me about Hinchcliffe, but just kind of conversations I had with other people that kind of sniff around and try to find out the same information that I try to find out, that perhaps Skylands could be an option to start the year in case the renovations don't start. But then it seemed like I started getting some pushback on that. So that started to cast some doubt. That was all on Tuesday night. On Wednesday, the formal announcement came through, and that formal announcement was pretty much what we said a month ago. Hinchcliffe is going to be the home of the Jackals. The plan is still for 2023 to start there. There may be a road trip to start just in case they need some more time for renovations. There's obviously a lot of questions there. We have some bullet points from the press conference that they held. In that press conference, we will try to link in the show notes, of course, as we do with everything, so you could watch through yourself and view what they're saying and get your own read on it. But we did go through it, and to be quite honest, it was what you expect of a press conference, an announcement conference, more than anything else. But I guess before we jump into some of those problems and some of those observations, what do we think that the plan to go to Hinchcliffe has now become official? We knew for a month, but now it is officially official, and now we can really start promoting and start to get a good idea of what's going to happen.
Well, I think it's really exciting for sure. It's a different look. Even though this isn't necessarily new information, I think the one thing that the missing piece is this 100% going to be ready for 2023, and it looks like that answer is likely yes. So that's certainly good news for the Jackals, and you would hope, just from their standpoint, that they wouldn't have to do like a whole shared stadium thing at Skylands, because there's a lot of there's some possibility for issues with that we've seen in the Atlantic League plenty of times this year, with the down in Lexington. So I think that it's good that we're talking about a team that'll be ready in a stadium that'll be ready in 2023, and the excitement seems to be there. Now will people end up showing up? I guess that's something we'll have to find out, and we'll have to see how the stadium looks once it's ready. But I think I think just now that the news is officially official, as you said, is a really, really good thing. It's really exciting. I'm interested to see maybe how long it's like. Are they going to stay the New Jersey Jackals? Is there any sort of rebrand down the road? I guess we'll have to see. But I think that's probably the next step to this. But for now, I think it's exciting for sure.
It definitely is. It does add that air of excitement there. And it did seem to draw a pretty large crowd, both from people on the Patterson side, the Frontier side, and, of course, the New Jersey Jackals side as well. Just kind of going into those bullet points now for what we can take away from that press conference. Obviously, the Patterson is getting the Jackals. It's pretty straightforward. We knew about that, so we'll go into that. Some of the things we learned, though, was that this was in discussion for about 2 years now. So essentially, from when El Dorso took over the team to now, this has kind of been going back and forth between the city, mainly the mayor of Patterson, and El Dorso, the owner of the Jackals. Another piece in getting this done was the Niners manager, Bobby Jones. Not exactly the name I expected to see mentioned, and I certainly didn't expect to see him show up in a red blazer as well, so I'm not quite sure what that can mean for his future with the Miners. Maybe a move to the other team in New Jersey now is seemingly on the horizon. I've certainly heard rumblings about that as well. So that is definitely a story to watch unfold in the near future, certainly. But he had a large hand in trying to get that done, wanting to do a lot of work in Patterson with the stadium. And now that we have a team based out of there, certainly provides a wonderful opportunity for him to do that kind of work and get more kids into baseball, which is a large talking point that kept coming up during the press conference. As mentioned earlier, the plan is still to have the ballpark done in time for opening day 23. So I imagine they hit a bit of a hiccup. I tweeted out kind of jokingly earlier in the week. Someone asked, what's the timeline on getting this done? You know, can it reasonably be done in 23? And I simply put, anyone that knows North Jersey knows that construction projects in Passaic County really work on their own timeline. So, so kind of under that assumption, I would hope it gets done, but it could equally take 3 months to finish just as easily as it could take 6 months or even 9 months to get it done. So to try and use the crystal ball to say, I'd probably say expect like sometime end of April, May, I think would be a reasonable expectation to start to see some serious progress. If you want to keep up to date with, you know, some of the progress going on in the stadium, the Hinchcliffe Stadium Twitter account, which I will try to remember to link in the show notes as well, is a great place for that. They post nearly daily updates as to what they're doing that day, what's going in, what's being worked on for that day. So if you want to stay up to date with that, you certainly can. Likewise, something else that was mentioned, in addition to a lot of the renovation work being done, not just to the stadium, but to the area as a whole. Some new apartment buildings are going up. I believe they also mentioned some commercial buildings as well. There's going to be a more of a river walk too, I believe they mentioned, by the Great Falls, as the stadium's located not too far from the Great Falls. There's a lot of work going on in that area. One of those things is also going to be a new parking deck. However, it's only going to hold 350 cars. That could be a very big problem if most of your...
Yeah, that's not a lot of cars.
Yeah, at best you gotta assume that's maybe 700, 1,000 people max that you're gonna get out of that. And that's assuming you're having multiple people in cars, obviously. So, and that's also assuming that the stadium on game day is gonna get sole access to that parking garage, which may not be the best bet in the world either. So that's something to worry about. And then just a couple other things here. I would also say there's no real clear consensus among the fan base, at least the one that was watching the Facebook stream, as to whether or not it's a positive or negative move. It seemed like a lot of more suburban fans were very annoyed about this move. They didn't like the move to Patterson. They don't plan to go to Patterson, which I have my own thoughts on that, and their complaints about that. And then other people that were more centered in Patterson, based off of Patterson, were very excited for this, very excited to have a team nearby, and we're certainly looking forward to supporting and applying the city for their effort to get the team there. Only other two notable things that I got out of this press conference was that there was no real meaningful update as far as how close we are to the completion of the renovations and as to how this field of play is going to work. Some online discussion has basically kind of boiled it down to this stadium setup's going to have to be somewhat resemblant of the old Polo Grounds in New York to make it work, just due to the shape of the stadium itself and the way that the renovation plans have been designed. I believe they're planning on taking the track out, which didn't conform to New Jersey high school standards, which was the point of having the track there anyway. But there's other issues with the renovations to make it baseball ready, as baseball was not in the forefront of the mind when the money got put through to renovate the stadium. And then the other thing, and this is a very cool thing too, is that we can expect some kind of celebration from the Jackals on July 5th to celebrate Larry Doby breaking the American League's color barrier, similar to what Jackie Robinson did in the National League, of course. And Larry Doby is connected to Patterson via his upbringing. So that would be the direct resemblance and the reason why he got mentioned there. So that could definitely be something very cool to see play out there. But those are just kind of the immediate takeaways that I got from the press conference. So I suppose I'll let you get a word in now.
Really cool. Yeah, the Doby thing's really cool. I think that, because I almost think kind of when people study the history of baseball and of course like the integration of the major leagues, I feel like the name Larry Doby kind of goes by the wayside a little bit. And you know, Jackie Robinson gets so much love and of course is well deserving of it. But I mean, Larry Doby dealt really with a lot of similar things when he broke the American League's color barrier just a couple of years later. So I think that seeing them, and of course he has the Patterson connections, and seeing that, I think that seeing them really dive into that kind of history of Patterson is really good to see. Now, as far as the other points you mentioned, the parking thing is going to be interesting because, of course, to be honest with you, I think the biggest part of when you have is getting fans to the ballpark when you have a stadium that's in the middle of a city, any city. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter which one, but when it's in the middle of a city in an urban area, parking is the biggest issue and the biggest complaint. Staten Island knows this issue very well as well. So 300 whatever cars, that's going to be interesting to put it mildly. So I think that's something that I don't know what kind of options they have around the stadium, but I think that is something that's going to have to be addressed. But I think overall a lot of positive developments, and of course, assuming that the construction stays on a good schedule, which, you know, I think is not a guarantee. Of course, I always appreciate the New Jersey construction jokes for the two New Jersey co-hosts as well. But I think that overall I like the celebration, the energy seems good, at least initially, around the move to this ballpark. I am very interested to see what the field and kind of the dimensions itself looks like. If you mentioned just like the Polo Grounds, if anybody knows anything about the Polo Grounds, quite a shape as far as like the outfield dimensions and fences. I mean, I don't know if it'll be I highly doubt it'll be an exact carbon copy of it. But if it is indeed an incredibly long way to center field and really short down the lines, that could be very, very interesting once this ballpark's open and ready to go.
It absolutely could. And it'll present a lot of very interesting things, and it'll be kind of a return to like the very early days of baseball, where you actually have legitimate ground rules for a lot of things. I think the only other ballpark where you could realistically say ground rules are in effect would probably be Bosse Field in Evansville, just because these stadiums are of the same vintage. So realistically, that's got to be the only way this will work out. But even still, with that in mind, you have to think that there's going to be a lot of other interesting pieces. And just for people wondering, like, what do you mean by pologram dimensions? To left field, you had on the nearest side 279, So not very far at all. But when you went all the way back out, because it was essentially from the infield out a square, the outfield a square, not anything else like you could describe it as, was 450 to dead center was 483 to far right field was 449, and then to near right field was 258. So you have some dimensions here which are extremely interesting. And obviously, if you're not familiar with the Polo Grounds, definitely look it up. It's a very interesting building that has a very long and rich baseball history. But I would really kind of like to see that kind of setup used here for the stadium itself. But again, I do question exactly how the seating's going to work in there. There's some designs that we have seen so far, some renderings of what the final renovation's going to look like, and obviously it's a horseshoe-shaped setup there, so you could just put home plate at one far side and, you know, have everything else set up pretty well. It's not going to be a 360 concourse, of course, but it could still work for that, but it is going to be a very, very interesting setup. There is definitely a lot of logistical concerns here. Likewise, you have to kind of change up the renovation strategy if you're removing the track, and then you have to accommodate for a professional level of equipment, I guess facility upgrades would be the best way of describing it. So that is a concern to me, but I will say this much, and it is something I do want to address. The amount of people saying, I'm not going to Patterson, I got issues with Patterson, whatever it may be, those are fine and fair and legitimate concerns. I'm not going to say they're not. The city has a reputation for a reason. That said, I really don't value when people say they won't get me to Patterson. They weren't getting you to Yogi Berra anyway. So asking why you left Montclair State, it's like you were drawing 800, 900 on average a game. I mean, when was the last time they broke 1,000 a game on average anyway? Probably 19 at best, more than likely a little bit before 19. Those are not sustainable numbers. I'd have a lot more sympathy if they were drawing even 1,200 a game. Because then you could say, all right, well, that puts them still bottom half of the league attendance-wise, but closer to the middle, closer to the median. If they were getting the median number, the average number of fans a game as the league average is, I'd have a lot more sympathy for that. I'd say, you know what, they probably should have accommodated that more. That should have been more of a concern. But I also guarantee you, the forces that be would have had that as much more of a serious concern. So when I hear people complaining, it's like, well, you're complaining, yes, but what grounds do you have to complain about it when you really didn't do anything to prevent it, right? Like, if you would have went to games, if you would have brought friends and family to games and spent more money at the ballpark, there was ways that you could have individually impacted the team and then had, as a collective fan base, more of a say in where they were going. But at the end of the day, that didn't happen because you weren't enough of a force to really take seriously, because there wasn't enough of you to take seriously. So that was something that I just got tired of seeing spammed in the chat over and over again.
Yeah, 100% agree. Because, I mean, that was my initial point, is the worry about how are we going to get fans to go to Patterson? Honestly, they weren't going to Yogi Berra anyway. You just got to look at the numbers objectively like that. At the end of the day, like, yeah, of course they're going to lose some fans going to Patterson, but they could also gain a lot more going to Patterson. We don't know. So, yeah, that I totally agree with that. If you went to like maybe 2 Jackal games a year and you're saying that you'll never go to Patterson, that's fine. Like, okay, like, cool. At the end of the day, you don't have a legitimate gripe in that sense, and you know, I think that it's not like they were drawing well at all. I mean, they were dead last in the league in attendance. Yeah. So I don't think that's something the Jackals really should worry about when they're talking about this move, because they were dead last. So at the end of the day, I totally agree with you. It's not like that they're losing many fans, or it's not that they're losing a substantial amount of fans just because there wasn't many to begin with, and now you're hoping to gain some more and establish a new fan base in Patterson.
Exactly. It's how much more can you really lose when you've already lost that much, right? So On that note, I think we've kind of said all we're going to say about the matter, although I do think we're going to come back to the one comment I kind of made in passing there, which was Bobby Jones's future with the Miners. I will say, when I saw that, and then I got like a couple of comments about it from a couple of different people, all of which I trust and be in the know to varying degrees, and they all were kind of leading me. They didn't say anything, but they were leading in a certain direction. And then the more sniffing around I did, I think there's some smoke there. I really do. I wouldn't be shocked to see him migrate teams in New Jersey. I'll put it like that. That's something that once we're out of the postseason and we're done with all of this, it's something I'm definitely going to want to revisit unless there's been some sort of formal announcement one way or the other. So, certainly something to watch. I think you're going to see a lot of very interesting moves from both New Jersey teams this offseason. So if you're a Miners fan or a Jackals fan, this is going to be a fun offseason. That's something I think I can safely say. With that said, though, we're going to make our move into postseason baseball because it is championship weekend, because all the championship games are starting this weekend, or rather are in the middle of happening. And we're going to start with the Frontier League like we all have done pretty much all year, because this past week in the Frontier League has lived up to the hype, starting with Game 2 of the divisional series against Ottawa and Quebec. Ottawa traveled to Quebec up 1-0 in the series. They needed one win to get the job done. It was a very, very close and hard-fought game, and honestly is a solid contender for Game of the Year. Ottawa took a lead early. Quebec snatched the lead from them, made it 2-1. Then the third, tied it up. Ottawa did. Then in the fourth, Quebec got the lead back. In the sixth, Ottawa takes it back, and then it's score locked and deadlocked for quite some time. In the eighth inning, the lights go out because there's a power outage. Then luckily the lights came back on. The power was turned back on. Although I will say, if you look up some of the videos from Quebec and from, I believe, Carl Tardif, who won the Reporter of the Year for the Frontier League, you look up some of the videos they were tweeting out. It was very cool. They were singing and whatnot. They had like the phone lights, like candles in the stadium and whatnot. They were having a really fun time. It seemed like a fantastic atmosphere for a baseball game, to be honest with you. And then they get to the bottom of the ninth. Quebec has no outs, bases loaded. Matt Valen comes in and he strikes out the next three batters in order to retire the side, end the threat. 10th inning, each side gets a runner, but doesn't really do anything with it. We get to the 11th. At this point, the pitcher for the Miners that's been on the mound in Franklin Parra, he's thrown in 3 innings. He's going on to his 4th inning of work, and he's been lights out to this point. He would wind up pitching the 4 full innings, only walking 1 as the lone base runner that would get on base, and he struck a 5 in those 4 innings as well. But more to the point, the Capitals managed to get some more base runners on, and then TJ White winds up getting a base hit with, I believe, 2 outs in the bottom of the 11th to get the 4th and winning run across the plate for the Capitals, forcing a Game 3. So before we get on to Game 3 and then finish talking about that series as a whole, it was an exciting finish to Game 2, and that deserves its own conversation right now.
Yeah, I think I think it had to be Game of the Year, honestly, just with beyond baseball, with the lights going out and kind of setting all of that into motion. It was an awesome game, and that's what an elimination game between two rivals should be, honestly. And it was just seesaw back and forth. You get hats off to Franklin Parra, really, out of the Quebec bullpen, and without giving up a hit for 4 innings, finishing that all the way. And I think that's exactly what you would, with Pat Scalabrini running the show, that's Parra's game at that point, especially with how he was pitching. You're either going to win with him or you're going to lose with him. But yeah, just an unbelievable game, a true classic between both of these teams, and certainly to force a Game 3. You almost wish like a game like this could have been like Game 3, but just an unbelievable baseball game that will go down in the history books, especially especially if it ends up being a special season for one of these teams.
Absolutely there. I mean, I also just wanted to acknowledge Matt Valen had a fantastic performance as well. Both bullpens really showed up and balled out, really. I mean, you can't ask for a pitcher to come into a more high leverage situation of bases loaded, none away, tie game, bottom of the ninth. If you even walk a guy, even a deep fly ball or a passed ball will lose the game for your team. And you come in and you not just get 3 outs, but you get 3 strikeouts. That's some real ice in the veins type stuff there. But yeah, Franklin Parra, I mean, his performance is just as, if not even more impressive, that you only walk one person in probably the 4 most high leverage innings of your entire season. Because you come in after the lights come back on in the 8th, it's a tie game for 8, 9, 10, and for his part of the 11th. I mean, knowing that even one slip up could end your season, that's some high leverage, that's some high stress situations there. And he just handled it so tremendously well that you just gotta tip your cap to him. I mean, that's just Ottawa getting beat by a fantastic pitching performance. And I mean, like you said, it has to be game of the year. I mean, you can't ask for anything more in a playoff game than that. So that sent us in motion to Game 3 on Sunday. Both Game 3 and Game 2 of the West Division Series would be played on this day as well. It was also a close game for a while. We'll finish up on the Quebec Series, of course. Scoreless through the first 3. Quebec breaks the tie. They get 1 run, nothing going in the 5th, but in the 6th is really where they kind of broke it open. They put up 3 runs, took a 4-0 lead. In the 8th, each side got a run, and that was just about all there was. So I guess you could say it was a lower stress game if you're a Quebec fan, but even still, a 5-1 victory is it's not always the most low stress game. Certainly available there. Carlos Santo with the win in that one, and hats off to Chris Bucia as well. Santo went 5 1/3, 3 hits, no runs, 6 walks, 4 strikeouts for Santo. But Chris Bucia, the guy who I kind of thought was going to get Game 2, but thinking about now, it does make sense that you would hold back the better of your 2 starters for a Game 3 if you need them, and also keep them ready for a possible championship game start as well. But Bucia went out 4 2/3. He gets tagged with a loss, 2 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts there. A solid outing here. Zach Westcott comes in relief for him. Only goes 2/3 of an inning. He surrendered 3 hits, 2 earned on 3 hits and 1 walk. Certainly there. And then Matt Valen came in as well. And then Escara also came in to pitch for them too. Bullpen outside of Westcott did pretty solid. And I think in the case of Zach Westcott, he threw a lot of innings over the course of about a week's time. So I think that just kind of caught up to him at a bad point. And meanwhile, on the flip side, Michael Austin came in to relieve Santo. He allowed no base runners, struck out 3 of the 5 outs he managed to get. David Richardson surrendered 2 hits and 1 run. And then Samuel Adams finished the job. He went 1 inning, struck out 2 in the 9th, and ended the day for the Titans and ended their season here. So certainly was a bit of a touch and go series in the beginning, and then Quebec kind of took over there. But a great series nonetheless.
Oh yeah, a series for the books for sure. And I hope this is not the last time that we see in the near future that we see these 2 teams battle it out in a playoff series. I think you hit it right on the head as far as Westcott, and I think I think he got to a point where he was just running out of gas a little bit, and I understand putting him in out of the bullpen. It's an elimination game and all hands on deck. Just kind of seemed like he was running out of gas a little bit at the end. Of course, it already started a playoff game earlier, but I think that you got to give credit certainly to Quebec for the offense. Even though it was off to a bit of a slow start, they had that big 6th inning, and the pitching. I mean, the one thing you could say about Quebec that whole series, the pitching was really good, especially the back end of that bullpen was lights out. and that's why they're such a good team. That's why they're hard to beat. And I mean now, and they were able to put away the rival Titans for to advance to the Frontier League Championship Series.
Absolutely. And I mean, also hats off to the Ottawa Titans too. I mean, coming into this series, I thought it was going to be a steamroll situation. And I think part of that too is I watched a Boulder team that really just was out of gas go up against a Titan team that had more left in them. And so it really made it look lopsided. I was just thinking, oh, well, this is a Titan team just taking advantage of a weaker Boulder team that just is out of gas. But they showed in this series that they are and were a very legitimate threat. And honestly, if they would have gotten to the finals instead of Quebec, I would have given them an equally as good shot against their Western Division opponent. And they really did prove an awful lot to me. There was a lot of guys, AJ Wright being one guy that really stepped up in this postseason. And I certainly am interested to see what kind of team they're going to return next year. I think Ottawa, if they could just be a little bit more consistent in the regular season, could very well win the East Division next year. I think they are a very, very good team, and they definitely changed my opinion of them over the course of this series. I have to give them that, and hats off to the Titans on that. It was a very fun series, a very well thought series too. So a very enjoyable, very, very enjoyable series.
Yeah, for sure. I think an Ottawa team that they haven't played, and they haven't played a full season. Of course, they kind of had to build the team from scratch going into the Frontier League. It was a really difficult situation for them coming in, and Bobby Brown did a great job, and nothing to hang their heads about at all. And going down to a really good Quebec team. So I mean, but Ottawa certainly, what a great season for them.
Absolutely. On the flip side, in the West, Game 2 took place, and I want to really say that it was a closer game than the score would have you believe, but it never really felt like, from what I was seeing on it, that this game was ever really truly in doubt. In the second inning, Schaumburg struck for 4. The Wild Things would not get on the board until the 6th. They put up a run in the 6th, put up a run in the 7th. They had a couple of threats in there, of course, but in the 9th, Schaumburg got both runs back plus another to go up 7-2. And then in the 9th, there was just nothing going for the Wild Things. So the final score is 7-2. Schaumburg sweeps Washington in that one. And this is a Schaumburg team that last week I said they're opportunists. They will take advantage of it. If you give them an opening, they will take full advantage of it and they will make you pay. And they proved that again in this series. But for just as much as they're opportunists, this is a team that has a lot of familiar faces from last year's championship team, supplemented with a lot of newer additions that they just kind of go right for you, and they know how to play postseason baseball. And if you're not careful, they are going to beat up on you. You have to approach them very carefully and kind of get a little bit of luck from some of their, hit or miss guys. And the ones that aren't hit or miss, you just got to do your best to contain them. And if you're able to do that, then, you're all well and good. But if the hit or miss guys are hitting, you're going to have a really rough night. And that kind of was proven in this series as the Boomers, they beat up on Washington for the second straight year in the postseason. And on the flip side, I mean, it's going to be tough being Washington again, getting so close to playing for a championship and trying to get that first championship. One of the teams that truly has been a model franchise, been very successful on the field, off the field, to still not have that championship, it does kind of burn you, and to be eliminated again by the same team as last year, that's got to hurt as well. But a lot of good performances on that Schaumburg side, and unfortunately for Washington, they just they had 2 bad innings, and that kind of cost them the whole game when you get down to it.
Yeah, I think Schaumburg, I mean, they are the poster child for getting hot at the right time. And that's not to say, because I think last year was a bit more of an example for that, per se, just because, I mean, to be honest with you, last year they won a bad division. They were pretty much an average team for most of the season.
You could even argue below average, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this year they had a better regular season, but I mean, yeah, this team, it's got a sting certainly for Washington, but I mean, you got to give credit where credit's due, and Schaumburg getting hot at the right time, taking down a really good Washington team. And I mean, when you look at this game too specifically, I mean, Rob Whalen's a really good arm, and they were able to hit him pretty good for 5 innings. And Schaumburg, I mean, overall, the one thing you got to say about Schaumburg is, man, did their offense come to play in this series. And shocked and something that we really haven't seen against Washington all year is their pitching staff honestly getting brutalized the way they did in this series. And just being able to go win a game on the road, especially in this game too as well. So I mean, congratulations to them. Their offense is getting red hot at the right time for sure, and which should sound familiar to a lot of Frontier League fans. Will they be able to finish it? Well, I guess we'll have to see about that. But setting up a big showdown with the Quebec Capitals. But I mean, same old story for the Schaumburg Boomers, because they just when it comes playoffs on, you can never ever count them out, and they've proven that yet again.
It's honestly so impressive that they're able to do that. Not to mention that if you look at their bullpen, between Scott Shears and Thompson, they gave up 1 run in this game 2, and they allowed 2, 4, 6, 7 base runners in about 3 2/3 work. That's pretty impressive. I mean, Daryl Thompson, not the Daryl Thompson, but Daryl Thompson, the reliever Daryl Thompson, in 2 innings of work, he struck out 5. He faced 10 batters. So half the guys that came up, he was striking out, and only 4 of them reached base here. So once you take out the 2 walks and the 2 hits, I mean, it was still an impressive performance with him, but even more impressive there. I mean, it's a strong bullpen, and also Yoshikawa got to start again. So it tells me that light tower in game 1 of the postseason, that wild card game, almost helped out the Boomers a lot, right? Because Yoshikawa pitched pretty good to start. You know, it's very limited amount of work before game 1 had to be suspended. And then he gets to come in, he gets to pitch a couple more times as well, because his arm's still fresh. He basically made a bullpen start in that first game, and he's able to pitch in this decisive game, and quite clearly, he went 5 1/3, allowed 5 hits, 2 walks, and 1 run, struck out 6. He clearly was on. He clearly was a large reason why the Wild Things couldn't really get any offense going that day, and it allowed the bullpen, which kind of had to do some work in other games, to rest. And it's definitely very helpful for them. And it's going to be interesting to see, how the rest of the championship series plays out, as that's got underway this past Wednesday, the 14th, with game 1 being at Schaumburg, as well as game 2 at Schaumburg, as now we switch to a best of 5 for the Quebec and Schaumburg series to win the championship of the Frontier League. But very interesting series in a very interesting way that's all worked out.
Yeah, I think just the fact that Schaumburg continuing to do what they do in the postseason, and for Washington, second consecutive year, it's a tough one to swallow. Going out against the same team, you almost wonder what else can they really do. I still think they're at a point where they're building their roster the right way. It's just baseball playoffs in any league is always a crapshoot, and they're just not able to get hot when it matters most. So I mean, congratulations to Schaumburg, and a tough way to go out for Washington, who had so many things go their way during the regular season once again, but it just wasn't enough again in the postseason.
Yeah, unfortunately for Washington there, but we do have a championship to look at, and we will get started on that right now. Game 1 in Illinois on Wednesday, the 14th of September. Game 1 went to Quebec, 6-3 win for them. A couple of big innings to start. They got all their runs in innings 2, 3, and 4. 2 in inning 2, 3 in inning 3, and 1 in inning 4. The Boomers kind of answered back in the 6th and the 7th. They put up 2 in the 6th, 1 in the 7th. But in the end, while the hits were similar, the runs were not. A big win for Miguel Cienfuegos, who goes 6 innings, allows 7 hits and 2 earned runs. Only 3 walks for him, only 3 strikeouts as well. David Richardson's responsible for that other run on the board, but Frank Monticello does his job Franklin Parra, just a few days after having a very clutch performance in Game 2, comes in and shuts the door, gets the save in one inning of work, allows 2 base runners, gets a strikeout. That's all she wrote. Flip side for the Boomers, Luis Perez was pitching. He allowed 10 hits, 6 runs, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, and 6 innings of work. After Perez exited the game, though, only 3 walks and 2 hits by the bullpen there. So quite clearly against Schaumburg, showing that the bullpen is really the backbone of this team. If they can get a good start, they can shut you down. That's something we've known this whole postseason, and really most of the season this team was capable of doing. Bullpen guys, Pichardo, Shears, and Joyce for the Boomers there, all looking very strong in their outings as well. Overall, though, just not too much offense going for the Boomers, while the Capitals managed to get runs across early and then defend the lead. That's what good teams do, right?
Yeah, I think, honestly, Nick, I think that I view this Game 1 in this series as almost a must-win for Quebec. And yeah. I say that because they had Miguel Cienfuegos on the mound. He was good, not great, but he was certainly good enough to shut down a red-hot offense, and I mean, of course, giving up just 2 earned runs over 6 innings. I kind of felt like this is a game that Quebec had to win, and they did, because one, Cienfuegos on the mound, and for Schaumburg, they were kind of reeling on the pitching end. I mean, Luis Perez had a really rough regular season. I believe ERA over 6. During the regular season, and kind of a swing roll. So I think that I think this was really a game that Quebec had to win, and they did. They took care of business. They jumped on Perez early, which is what they had to do, because you didn't want to get into the back end of that Boomers bullpen in a game that's tied, or you're tied or behind late. And they didn't, and they jumped out ahead early. They kind of put this one to bed, even though Schaumburg kind of climbed back into it. Quebec did a good job kind of limiting the damage. I don't know if you'd agree, Nick, but I think I kind of view this Game 1 as one that Quebec had to have, and they got it.
I wouldn't necessarily say Game 1 was a must-have, but they did need to split in Schaumburg, and between the two of them, Game 1 would have been a lot easier to win than Game 2. So I would say, I guess through doing some jumps on it, I would agree with it. They couldn't go back to Quebec down 2-0. That was just not going to be something that they would have been able to do. I don't see this team being able to take 3 in a row against the Boomers. So when you look at Cienfuegos versus Perez, or as we'll discuss in a second for Game 2, Cody Pavea versus Yoshikawa, it's clear which one's going to be a much easier win, and that is Game 1. And so they did take it. I would agree with that, and they managed to keep the Boomers at bay for that one. That wasn't quite the case in Game 3, though, or Game 2, though. Game 2 was close for a while. Schaumburg took a lead in the third, went up 1-0, remained no more runs until the 7th, where Quebec tied it up in the top half of the 7th. Boomers got it back in the bottom half. We went into the 8th inning with a 3-1 score, so still a very close game until the bottom half of the 8th, where the Boomers exploded for 6 runs, nothing going for Quebec on either half of 8 or 9. It finishes being a 9-1 game, and quite frankly, there was just no real offense for the Capitals in Game 2. Yoshikawa, as I just mentioned, pitched in this one, another 5 in the third innings, 3 hits, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, a solid performance any way you cut it. Thomas Nickel, he came in relief, inning and 2/3, allows 1 hit, an unearned run, and he strikes 2 out. Kristen Stott, Daryl Thompson, both pitch an inning. 1 walks 1 hit, 1 allows a hit, both got a strikeout, and neither allowed a run. So only 5 hits on the day for the Capital offense, only 3 walks on the day for the Capital offense, and no earned runs. They got 1 off an error. So that wasn't exactly great. But meanwhile, on the Quebec side, the starting pitching wasn't the issue. 6 1/3, 8 hits, 3 runs, 2 earned, no walks, 10 strikeouts. So a solid opening performance. It was Samuel Adams coming in, and his 2/3 of work in relief just wasn't good. 3 hits, 2 walks, 5 runs, all earned, strikes 2 out. Codina, he comes in, pitches a third of an inning, allows an earned run and a hit. gets an out, and then David Gauthier pitches 2/3 of an inning in relief, doesn't allow a hit, doesn't allow a run, doesn't allow a walk, doesn't strike anybody out, bunch of zeros in the stat line there. But at that point, the game was long dead. So it wasn't a bang-up performance from the Quebec bullpen there, and this was one of those times where, as I said a moment ago, if Schaumburg gets a good start from their starting pitcher, they're a very tough team to beat, and that showed today because that bullpen was not going to break at all, and that Game 2 was on Thursday. Game 3 is later today, Saturday, and that is in Quebec now. So we are done with U.S. Frontier League baseball until 2023 now. But an interesting Game 2, though.
Yeah, I think it really showed the distinct advantage that Schaumburg, as good as Quebec is, it showed the advantage that Schaumburg has in this series, undoubtedly, and that's their bullpen. And it also should be acknowledged that how hot the Schaumburg lineup is right now, and maybe they were kind of sleeping a little bit for the first part of this series, but they really woke up just in time. And yeah, the score probably makes it look a lot more lopsided than it actually was. But I mean, they were able to put it on this Quebec bullpen. And at the end of the day, this was one that obviously this is a game that Schaumburg had to have. I think that's pretty obvious when you're at home and you're already down 1-0. But I think that it shows really how Schaumburg's going to have to win this series. They're going to have to keep it close, turn the ball over to their bullpen, and let them work and let their offense try to go to work against a Quebec bullpen that's had its little bit of struggles. They're not a bad group, but certainly not one on the level of Schaumburg, and especially how they're pitching right now. So it sets up a very interesting, a pivotal Game 3 in Quebec later tonight, of course. And it should be really fun for sure. I mean, these two teams, I think right now they're showing that they're the two best teams in the league right now, especially with the way that Schaumburg was able to dominate Washington in those two games, and it should be a lot of fun. And of course, a pivotal Game 3. But Quebec got the split that they needed, so I think they're in a pretty good position themselves also.
Exactly. Now we have a best of 3 series when you get down to it, and I imagine you'll see Sano go in Game 3 on the one side. On the flip side, I'm not quite sure what we're going to see out of Schaumburg. They have some options, certainly, but obviously Yoshikawa's your best pitcher here. He just went a couple days prior. I imagine if needed, he could probably go in a Game 5 situation for Quebec. In theory, you could pitch Cienfuegos on Sunday for Game 4, or you could just wind up holding him back in case you need him for Game 5. That's a decision that they could, always make, certainly. So I'll be interested to see what the pitching matchup winds up being in both Games 3 and 4, and if necessary, 5, of course. But it is a surprisingly even series, and this is a series between two franchises that you could say are pinnacles of winning. Schaumburg has a lot of historical success in the postseason. Flip side, Quebec, they were by far the most dominant team in the history of the Can-Am League. They won, 5 titles in a row, 6 titles in a row, went to 7 finals in a row in a league that existed for about 10 years. I mean, you can't really ask for much more than that as far as a franchise's success goes. So truly a historic team that is accustomed to winning too. It does feel like a battle of titans and two teams that win in their own way, but both rely on a lot of similar attributes. And as we've seen so far, it really comes down to the bullpens as to who wins. Game 1 and Game 2, the better pitching performance won the game on both sides.
That's so often what's going to come down to in these playoff series is the pitching on both ends. But really just what is Schaumburg's offense going to stay hot now going on the road the way it has for most of these playoffs. So I think that's really interesting. I think also on the Quebec end of things, obviously you won't see Cienfuegos on Saturday. Could you see him on 3 days rest on Sunday? Could you see him on normal rest Monday? I think it's it's an interesting strategy, and that's something that Pat Scalabrine is going to have to decide of when to pull that card. And of course, so much is going to depend on what happens in Game 3 later tonight. So it's going to be fun for sure. You mentioned a battle of the Titans, but there's 3 Titans I think you can say in the Frontier League. One of them has already been eliminated, and now there's 2 left.
Very clever on that, and I do agree with that.
Very clever joke.
Very clever. I appreciate that. I'm not the only one making these kinds of jokes. But I will say, I think Cienfuegos, the answer is, if Sunday becomes a must-win, then he's the guy you go with. I think you gotta throw your best pitcher out, even if it is on short rest. He gives you your best chance to win. You run him out there, and obviously, if it's an elimination game, it's all hands on deck anyway. You're playing for your life. If it winds up being they win today, they take Game 3, then it becomes a lot simpler because you could just simply say, oh, okay, we have the luxury of resting him an extra day, getting him onto that regular rest. At that point, he will have been off the 15th, the 16th, the 17th, and then the 18th too. So he can pitch on Monday in that game, full rest. He'd be ready to go, business as usual. And obviously, you would like to see, no matter what, on Saturday and Sunday, get some mileage out of your starters as well. I think that is the one thing that I really don't like about that loss in game 2 is that it was your bullpen that lost it. Really, it was one bullpen pitcher that lost it. If you would have pushed your starter, they would have went, let's say, 7 innings, 8 innings, and that's kind of when they blew up. It's bad, no doubt about it, but at the same time, at least your bullpen didn't get burned through. And they do have the luxury of having the travel day before that, so they have off on the 16th. So a lot of the bullpen guys should be good. But if you could get some mileage out of a guy for the 17th or the 18th, either or, so that way when we look here in a possible Game 5, that all options are available, that really makes it a lot better. I would say as far as bullpen fatigue goes, I'm a little bit more concerned about Schaumburg, who knows their bullpen's good, so they go to him a lot. Even if they're only throwing 2/3 of an inning and a third, it's not too much mileage, but it's consistent. So that is a little concerning to me. But overall, I do think this is a really hard-fought series. And it's going to be one that I feel like no matter what the end outcome is, we have a champion where you can look at it and go, they earned this.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's between these two teams, I don't think there's any chance of kind of a fluke type of championship. Both these teams have really earned this spot, and we'll see when we talk next week. We'll see who ended up coming out on top, because it should be an exciting finish.
Absolutely. So I guess being that we have the luxury of being able to do this, who do you think is going to win, and how many games is it going to take to get that outcome?
I'm going to go Quebec in 5. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to win tonight. I think they're going to win Game 3. I think Schaumburg can win Game 4, kind of get their offense going. And then I'm not betting against Cienfuegos in a Game 5. So I think they would have the advantage. Quebec, if it were to get to Game 5, they have home field advantage. I think that I think Quebec's going to end up taking it home in a very close but great finish and take it home in 5 games.
Call it a cop-out, but I feel like I'm just going to pick whoever wins Game 3. I feel like the winner of Game 3, it may take 4, it may take 5, is going to wind up winning this series. That being said, and at the risk of not, having too much parity and diversity on the show, I am also going to agree I'm going to take Quebec in 5 as well. I think that Schaumburg's a dangerous enough team where they got at least one more win in them. But at the end of the day, Quebec seems like such a complete team that they're going to be hard pressed to lose. They seem like a team that, they've had, the knife put to their throat before in this postseason, and they've managed to fight back and win it. I mean, heck, look at Game 2 that we discussed about 25 minutes ago. They were on the verge of elimination, and they managed to put together 5-6 innings of just fantastic baseball to keep their season alive, and then take it the following day in an equally as high stakes game. So, man, I have a hard time betting against a team like that. And while Schaumburg's had some adversity in this postseason, They rolled through Washington pretty easily. They beat up on Evansville fairly easily, even before the tower light delay. The first day of game 1, they looked to be a better team, and then the second day they proved they were the better team by just the way they dismantled an Otters team that was, quite frankly, a very solid and complete team. So I'm not counting them out. I think Schaumburg's got some fight in them, but at the same point, they really haven't faced too much adversity in the postseason yet. They've been down in a series once. They managed to tie it up, but now if they're going back to Quebec, I like the Capitals to take it. I think they can win 2 out of 3 and win this championship again. So I'm going Quebec in 5. However, I do think whoever wins game 3 has a very, very, very good chance of winning this series.
Yeah, and that's why that game 3 is so pivotal. So I'm sure we'll have some better answers after the game's played tonight, but we'll have to see.
Yep, definitely there. And if you have, I guess it's Flow Sports, you can watch Game 3 on there. And if not, there are a bunch of radio streams available. That's how I usually, I guess you could say watch, but more listen to the Frontier League games, because for the price they want for Flow streaming, I'm not going to pay that. So that said, there is some very good radio men across this league. Definitely check them out. Check out their broadcasts. And on that note, we will go and switch to the other league that will have their championship starting today in the American Association. We had a very hard-fought, very well-contested, I guess, divisional round up into this past moment with our final 4 teams of Fargo, Kansas City, Cleburne, and Milwaukee. I believe last week at this time, we didn't quite know who was going to be in there. King County wasn't eliminated yet. I believe only Lincoln was actually eliminated. And there were some very close series here, but for the sake of brevity, we're going to kind of just look at the series that was and preview the series that will be this upcoming week here with a lot of intrigue in this one.
Oh yeah, a lot of intrigue certainly. I think in this series, I think the American Association playoffs in general did not disappoint. The great series that we ended up getting between Fargo, Moorhead, and Kansas City did not disappoint either, and setting up a very interesting championship series. Absolutely.
Here, and just to quickly cover how each team got here. Cleburne and Fargo, Moorhead, they didn't really face much adversity in their winner take all game 3s. Each side won 7-3. The situations to get there were a little bit different, but by and large, at the end, neither team really had to worry all too much. King County mounted a little bit of a charge in the 9th, but it fell flat. As far as Milwaukee's concerned, they had a little bit of a tougher path. They won 3-1, took some Brian Torres, tremendous fielding efforts, as well as a couple of really solid pitching performances for them to get the win, and also Miguel Gomez just going off and having himself a day. That said, coming into game 1, we had Kansas City versus Fargo Moorhead in North Dakota at Newman Field, and it didn't quite go the way of the Redhawks. I think that's safe to say. If they 5-1 loss, it was a very close game for a while. It wound up being 2-1 Fargo going into the 9th. We were thinking, okay, they got a real good shot that they may pull it out, and then in the 9th, it was a 4-run 9th inning for the Monarchs. They managed to just kind of take advantage of a Joe Jones that came in relief, surrendered the home run that gave up the lead change there. And unfortunate turn of events, JC Esquera just balled out in a pinch hitting performance there. His only at bat was a 3-run home run that gave them the lead. So unfortunate there for Fargo Moorhead, but they would get their revenge. On the flip side, looking at Milwaukee and Cleburne, Milwaukee takes that one 5-2. Again, another game that was close, I suppose you could say. It was 2-0 Milwaukee until the 8th, where they wound up going up 5-0. Cleburne gets a couple runs back, one in the 8th, one in the 9th, but in the end, that 8th inning is what did them in. Again, another very solid performance from Gomez. He goes 3 for 4, 2 runs, 4 RBIs. I believe he had a home run in there as well. So he definitely, he had 2 home runs, my mistake. So Miguel Gomez, certainly the MVP right there. There's a little bit of a sticky situation in that 8th inning that between Smith, Huckabee, and Gray, they managed to get out of, and then Ben Holmes finished the job in the 9th. So a couple of very interesting performances on both ends. Good starting pitching by and large. It just game 1 in both cases were very interesting. Set up a very interesting stage for game 2 on both counts.
Yeah, I think that in both cases you saw that how much the bullpen can really impact the game, and how much. I mean, honestly, when you look at that Kansas City Fargo Moorhead game, it's a gut punch certainly for Fargo Moorhead in that game. They had a home. They were at home. They had a 2-1 lead going into the 9th inning, and just were not able to to shut the door. And of course, a team like Kansas City is never out of it. But I think that the bullpens, even really on both cases, weren't. I mean, Kansas City certainly pitched well. Fargo Moorhead did not at all. Good, but I mean, the starting pitching, I mean, both in that game was really good between Matt Hall and Kevin McGovern. Went exactly how you would think it would. But so that was a huge win for Kansas City. And on the other end of things, I think Milwaukee, even though Cleveland was red hot, Cleveland got the win in their first round series. Milwaukee, they are the more talented team. They're a team that's played a lot better of late, and they were able to through a collection of relievers. They used 5 relievers after Schugel started the game, but a big road win for them in game 1, and the road teams in both cases taking game 1.
Definitely, yeah, it was the case there, and it set up a very interesting stage for game 2. And in the case of Fargo, like you mentioned, it was a gut punch to them, so they needed a big response, and they got it out of the gate to get the first run of the game. Kansas City answers back, goes up 3-1 in game 2. Then Fargo answers back by tying it, getting a couple of runs in inning number 6. Inning 7, they trade 2-run innings, and then in the 8th, this is where Fargo starts to pull away. They get 1 run. In the 9th, they get 2 runs, and in the end, they win 8-5 in a 4-hour epic of a game to force a game 3. Tyler Grauer was the starting pitcher for Fargo Moorhead. He goes 3 1/3, 4 hits, 3 runs. Only 1 was earned, but he walked 4. He struck out 4. And this is where the bullpen kind of came in. Feldman, Berlingmar, Stover, and DeBoard. They combined to go the rest of the way, a total of about 5 2/3 innings. They only allowed 2 runs combined. Both came from Berlingmar in his 2/3 of an inning. Everybody else allowed a grand total of 2 hits, a grand total of 2 walks, and struck out 5. So if you exclude that 1 reliever, the other 3 went out and did their job in spades. On the flip side, if you look at Kansas City, Nick Belzer goes 5 innings, 5 hits, 3 runs all earned, 4 walks, 4 hits. Bullpen-wise, Koch comes in. He gives up 2 runs. Neither were earned, though. And then the rest of the bullpen, Martinson did all right. Rhodes gives up 1 run on 1 hit, and Velez gives up 2 runs on 3 hits there. And then Rubio, he only pitched a third of an inning, and at that point, it looked like the damage was done. So overall, a fantastic response by the Fargo Moorhead Redhawks. The Cards were down, they were against them, and they managed to answer the call and fight back in their series to even it up and force a game 3, which would be on Thursday night.
It was this time. It was Kansas City's bullpen's turn to really struggle in this one. So I think that the Red Hawk offense got hot. They were really able to crack this Kansas City bullpen, and they were able to respond. It really shows a lot. It speaks to a lot about Fargo Moorhead that after losing a heartbreaker at home, that they were in an elimination game on the road against a great Monarchs team. They were still able to come from behind, fight and claw and get the victory. I mean, that shows a lot about their team. And at the end of the day, how could a series between the Fargo-Moorhead Redhawks and the Kansas City Monarchs in the playoffs not go 3 games? It just has to go 3 games. That's the rules. There's no way that was gonna turn into a sweep. But the Redhawks offense, they were off to a bit of a slow start, but they really picked it up late and were able to get a huge road win.
Absolutely. As I said, after that one, we were getting the series that we paid for certain. Each game had some late inning dramatics, and it was so worth it on that front. We go over to Cleburne and Milwaukee in their speedy little 3-inning game in what was an elimination game. Milwaukee struck first in the 2nd inning. They put up 1 run. They put up another run in the 8th. Cleburne would make it interesting in the 9th. They'd get 1 run back, but unfortunately for the Railroaders, that would be as close as they got. Milkman shut the door, take the elimination game 2. 2 runs to 1 run, and take the series 2-0. Ryan Zimmerman, with probably the most impressive performance of the postseason so far. In his 5 2/3 inning, he allows 1 walk and 2 hits, no runs, no earned runs, and he strikes out 12 batters, just bullying the Cleburne lineup there. Frank Bartow comes in to relieve him. 2 1/3 for him, 1 hit, 3 strikeouts for him. And Rodrigo Benoit, he comes in, he allows the 1 run, but he gets out of it. He strikes 1 out, allows 2 hits to end the day there. On the flip side, no shame to be had by Kevin Hilton or Austin Fairchild. And they go 7 1/3 for Hilton, 2/3 for Fairchild. 3 hits, 2 runs, both earned, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts for Hilton. Fairchild in his 2/3 of an inning allowed 2 hits and struck 1 out, but didn't allow any runs. So overall, fantastic performance by each pitching staff. But in the end of the day, it was just the Milkmen pulled it out. They pitched slightly better, and that's why they are playing for a championship later today.
Right, and I mean, what an unbelievable pitcher's duel this was between 2 great arms and Kevin Hilton and Ryan Zimmerman. And Ryan Zimmerman, I mean, just what else can you say? I mean, at the end of the day, Cleburne put 5 balls in play against him in 5 2/3 innings, it's just obscene. It's crazy. And the Milwaukee, they turned to him, and it's interesting because he had a decent regular season, but not a great regular season, a 4.45 ERA in those 19 starts in the regular season. But I mean, he saved his best outing of the season for the right time at home against Cleburne, and to put them away. And I mean, a great job by Frankie Bardo, especially out of the bullpen as well, getting a big 7 outs to turn it over to Benoit. Just a great day for the Milwaukee pitching staff, and their offense struggled, but at the end of the day, it was enough because of the performance of those 3 guys, and especially Ryan Zimmerman, who just honestly was unhittable.
It was, and that's the thing too. Zimmerman for the last few years, I don't mean any disrespect, but he's been painfully average to below average, really. He had a good season with, I believe it was St. Paul a few years back, but that was really it. He hadn't done too much else outside of that. And of course, you like to see it still, but he wasn't really the guy you'd expect to turn to in a situation like this. And he answered the call, and it was truly impressive there. And at the end of the day, I think we were both shaky about the whole East Division. We said about all of them, none of them really are that great. And if you really want to go down to it, the championship series is in the West. It's Fargo and Kansas City again. These are your 2 best teams, and it's not even particularly close. But going now into this final, and obviously we still have to talk about the game 3 between Fargo and Kansas City, but going into what will be the championship game later today and for the duration of the week, I feel a lot better about Milwaukee's odds. They came out and they performed when they needed to. Now, do I think they're going to win the championship? Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. That said, I don't think it's as hopeless of a cause as I would have thought even 2 weeks ago. So a lot from Milwaukee this past, I guess, 2 series, really.
Yeah, I mean, they're they're getting red hot. And honestly, they played very well the second half of the season, a lot better than they did in the first half. Their talent is starting to show, because the talent was never the issue with Milwaukee. They have plenty of it. It's just a matter about putting it together and winning ball games, which for the most part they have kind of late in the season. I mean, I picked them to come out of this division before the playoffs started. I just thought they were the most talented team, and Chicago just continued to be painfully average to below average. But I mean, getting a heroic performance like that from Ryan Zimmerman shows the depth that this Milwaukee team could have. Don't think they'll be the favorite in the championship series, but they are certainly a formidable opponent, and I think we could say the best team out of this division and out of the East Division got here.
I definitely agree with that. I think you were on to something too when you're saying they were a second half team, and I think that's a case for a non-insignificant amount of teams in the East Division, because all the playoff teams were at 500 or better, and you can look at Cleburne, an extremely good team in the second half. I mean, they went off on a crazy tear their last 30, winning 20 plus. So they're definitely a second half team. Milwaukee started to pick it up. King County definitely made a statement too. Really, outside of Chicago, every playoff team in the East was good in the second half. That's where they got their money's worth. And I think we may have focused on the record a little bit too much, and that kind of distracts us from the quality of team they were. I will agree in that I don't really think they're going to be a favorite against this next team, but that said, it does also help their cause a lot more. Because if you're hot, we saw in dozens of leagues over the last few years, being hot is just as good as being extremely talented. Because at the end of the day, it's one series, and with baseball, one series can go any way. And in a 5-game series, that's holds just as true as a 3-game series.
Yeah, I totally agree, and we've talked about it at length about the Frontier League as well. That's exactly what Schaumburg has proven again, and a team that gets hot, they can take down anybody, throw the regular season records and other stuff like that out the window. So Milwaukee's definitely put themselves in a position to do that now in the championship series.
Absolutely. And let's get around to talking about the team they're going to be playing. Game 3, Fargo-Moorhead versus Kansas City, of course, in Kansas City. It was scoreless through the first 2, but then Fargo strikes for 2 in the 3rd. They get 1 in the 5th and the 6th, and then in the 8th, Kansas City looks like they may have something. They may be coming back a little bit. They get a run, but that would be it. Fargo got some tremendous fielding plays. They got some lucky hits. They got exactly what they needed to take the game 4 runs to 1 run. Each side had 9 hits. Kansas City had 3 errors, which I suppose at the end of the day is what's going to do you in. Correa looked fantastic. He went 1 for 2 with a pair of walks, 2 RBIs, of course, and a run scored. Really, when you look across this whole lineup, everybody got a hit except for Drew Ward, who managed to get a walk, and the lone other guy is Alex Oland, who was the only guy to not reach base. So a fantastic performance all the way through that lineup. On the flip side, you look at Kansas City. They also had some guys getting hits, but it was really the upper half of that lineup. Kuzma, Almeida, Escara, and Santa, they did not get any hits. Now, of course, Escara was a pinch hitter, and he drew a walk as well as Santa did. And that was about it on that side. The upper half of the lineup, though, in Gillespie, Hernandez, Robeson, Grootjohn, Sweeney, Smith, they all were getting hits. They were getting on base, although in Grootjohn's case, he was 1 for 5, so not exactly killing the game. Same thing with Robeson, 1 for 4 in his case. But one lineup came to play. The other lineup was too top heavy and didn't really produce hits into runs. If you want to look at the starting performances, Peyton Wigington, he had probably the best start of his young career. 6 innings, a 6-hit, no run, 4 walk, 4 strikeout baseball in a clutch situation. Riley comes in, he pitches 2/3 of an inning, walks 3 guys, so that was kind of what did him. He faced 5 batters or 4 batters rather. Walked 3 of them, got 2 outs. And in the case of Jones, he comes in, he gives up that 1 earned run, but that was about it. 2 hits. So he was fine. Then Dubard comes in the ninth and shuts the door. Flip side in Kansas City. Even Jalen Miller did not pitch bad. 5 innings, 3 runs, 2 earned, 1 walk, 6 hits, 3 strikeouts. Martinson, he came in, pitched an inning, surrendered an unearned run, struck 1 out, gave up 1 hit, and then Hartman came in, threw 3 innings of 2-hit, no-run baseball, but he walked 3 and he struck 2 out. So really, it wasn't even a case of poor pitching from Kansas City. It was the 3 errors and Fargo-Moorhead just kind of taking advantage of what they need to take advantage of. And at the end of the day, that's what you're going to have to do to beat very good teams. And after a real gut punch check in game 1, the Fargo-Moorhead Redhawks answered the call, and now they're going to be playing for the Miles Wolf Cup against the Milwaukee Milkmen later today.
Yeah, I think, first of all, how about the toughness of Fargo-Moorhead for being able to really take a gut punch on their home field and then go to Kansas City, toughest home place to play against a team of one of the best teams in the league on the road and win 2 games. I mean, just hats off to them. I mean, in this game specific, I mean, Peyton Wigington threw a great ball game. I think on the Kansas City side, you got to look at it in the sense of they had a lot of opportunities and they just didn't capitalize. I mean, their base runners, they had plenty of base runners in this game. I mean, they had 9 hits, but left 11 on base. That's going to be tough. That's going to be tough to win a game like that, especially when you didn't get a great start on the mound against a team like Fargo-Moorhead. So I think when you look at it from a Kansas City perspective, just a lot of missed opportunities, 1 run on 9 hits. And of course the 3 errors there don't help as well, leading to 2 unearned runs scoring, which had a huge impact on this game. I think that Fargo-Moorhead did what they had to do, but definitely Kansas City picked a bad game to play, to really struggle in a lot of facets in this game. And they had the opportunities, but they just were not able to capitalize. And I think that's ultimately what Kansas City is going to what they're going to look at for this game. Just a lot of missed opportunities and what could have been, but that's not to take anything away from Fargo-Moorhead, who played an awesome 2 games in Kansas City and were able to take it home. And congratulations to them and putting themselves in the championship series.
That's just it. I think they just kind of earned it. And I wouldn't say it's more Miller not giving a great start. He gave a fine start in my mind. It's just Wigington gave a great start. And when that's the case, and then you factor in the fielding mistakes, that's going to be a difference maker, unfortunately. And like you said, the Monarchs left opportunities just laying there, and you can't do that in an elimination game. And the thing is, I think if we would have played another 2 games, we probably could have seen a much different result. We could have seen perhaps a Fargo win or a Kansas City win rather than a Fargo win. Or we could have seen the same result. It's just these 2 teams were so closely matched that such events are going to be what makes you go, I guess Fargo is the slightly better team, but they both were very good. And like I said, I wish we would have had this for a championship. I think having that as a rematch of the championship for the championship again would have really been the most fitting end for this, but it's still, Redhawks Milkmen is still a fine series, and that starts later today at 6 o'clock in the Central Time Zone. All these times are about to be Central Time. So game 1 will be at 6 o'clock later today. Tomorrow on Sunday, 1 o'clock start time for Fargo-Moorhead and the Milkmen, which I'm not sure what I think about a 1 o'clock start on a football Sunday, but okay. That's the decision. That both of those games are going to be in Franklin, Wisconsin, so Milwaukee will be the home team. Those will be the last 2 Milkmen home games of the year. And then on Tuesday, the 20th, Game 3 will take place at 6:30 at Newman Outdoor in Fargo, North Dakota. If necessary, Game 4 and 5 will both be 6:30 starts. That will be Wednesday and Thursday. So at the very latest, the 22nd is when the American Association season will come to an end. Or if there is a sweep, it could end on Tuesday. So at some point, middle of next week, we will have our decision out in North Dakota as to who will be the Miles Wolf Cup champion. or otherwise known as the American Association Championship Team of the Year. So, be interesting to see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And, on that 1:00 Sunday start time, it's okay because the Packers are on Sunday Night Football against the Bears. So no worries, Milkmen fans. You get to go to the game and then go home and watch the Packers. I don't care how badly they played in week 1. They'll probably destroy the Bears on national TV for like the 18th consecutive time.
Do we know what time the Vikings kick off at, or are they Monday night? They are Monday night.
They are Monday night.
Okay, so they're being actually. So yeah, the 1:00 probably fits really good because I imagine North Dakota is probably Viking territory, and obviously a team in Milwaukee is going to be a Green Bay territory team. So hopefully they get some good attendance for that.
I hope so. It's gonna be a really good series.
It is. I guess we could go through everything here, but I think we're going to have a very similar prediction matchup here. Who do you have winning this series? I guess we'll just cut to the chase on it.
Yeah, I think Fargo Moorhead just has too much talent. I think they have the better pitching. I think they win this one in 4 games. I think they're going to be able to split in Milwaukee, and then Fargo Moorhead's going to be able to win Game 3 and Game 4 on their home field at Newman Outdoor to win. I just think they're the better team, the more talented team, and I've been saying, we've been really saying all year that the champion is likely coming out of the West. No reason to switch up on that now. So I got Fargo Moorhead in 4.
I'm going to agree with Fargo. I think Fargo has the win. Like you said, they got too many weapons. They're too talented of a team. They're too good of a team. And once you push a team that close to the brink of elimination, especially in the manner from which it came, you typically don't see that team go easy the next round. And of course, they had to play consecutive Game 3s. The series against Winnipeg. That being said, I do think it's going to take 5 games. I think Milwaukee having that extra day off is going to help them out. At the very least in Game 1, I think Milwaukee probably takes one of those 2 games in Milwaukee. I think they probably fight back and take one in Fargo. But in the end of the day, I think the Red Hawks are just too much to handle for this team. Keep in mind that Keon Barnum's also dealing with some sort of an Achilles issue as well, which really hampers his speed too, which kind of turns him into Adam Dunn, which is to say home run or out. He's not really going to be a threat when he gets on the base path. So if he gets a base hit, he's almost a double play waiting to happen. And that takes out a major bat in your lineup. I do think that the Milwaukee bullpen is one of the better ones in the league. I do think that they have some dangerous bats and they are playing hot and they're playing well. And that's why I think it's going the distance. But that being said, I think the Milwaukee wins are going to be close wins. I think the Fargo wins are going to be not so close. And I think in the end, we're going to see on Thursday night, Fargo Moorhead getting another Miles Wolf Cup under their belt and kind of getting back to where they should be at, which is atop the pyramid. So I think Fargo in 5.
There you have it then. There we go.
So on that note, we have one last championship series and one last playoffs to kind of go over before we get to the Atlantic League. And that is, of course, the Pioneer League. I know we haven't spent too much time on them so far this year, but we actually had some very interesting series. We had a couple of Game 3s in there on Thursday night. And that was between Grand Junction and Ogden and Missoula and Billings. And I think it'd be safe to say that Missoula and Billings was not the series we thought would be going to 3 games. Missoula I don't want to say they didn't do as good as we thought, because, I mean, their only loss came in extra innings. We'll talk about that series first, I suppose. They won Game 1 6-2. Billings answered back 6-5. And then ultimately in Game 3, Missoula took it 4-2. So the Mustangs did far better than I think we could have hoped they would do. It was a very close game. It was 3-2 going into the late innings in the Game 3 there. But ultimately, in the end, what is the best team in the Pioneer League and one of the better teams in Independent League Baseball showed why they were one of the better teams in Independent League Baseball over the course of the last 4 days.
Right, for sure. And Billings did do a good job. They put up a really good fight. And they were able to win that game 2 in 10 innings on the road, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. I mean, there's not a lot of teams have challenged Missoula really that whole season. I mean, the interesting thing is when you look at Billings, I mean, they pounded out 18 hits in that, and only 6 runs to show for it. But I mean, they pounded out 18 hits against obviously a really good Missoula team. So they were able to force a game 3. Just didn't have enough. Just didn't have enough eventually. But and Missoula able to take it home. But I mean, certainly a good showing for Billings in the playoffs as well.
Absolutely. I mean, and also we kind of expected Missoula, being the team they were, to just kind of dog walk them, just go right into the final and not lose a game the whole way. So the fact that, the Mustangs made it a contest, especially in the last 2 games, was nice to see. Flip side, Ogden, Grand Junction. Ogden drops game 1 to Grand Junction, 5-13. In game 2, they answer back, winning 10-6. And unfortunately for the Raptors, in game number 3, they blew a lead early. Grand Junction took advantage of it. Winds up being an 8-5 win. Grand Junction will advance. They were one of the hotter teams coming into this postseason. They won their division, the South Division, in the second half to get in. Raptor season ends. Overall, it's kind of what I expected here. This is the matchup I expected. Really, the only hiccup was that Billings series, going the distance. I didn't think that was going to happen, but overall, interesting postseason so far for our interesting Frito-Lay postseason for the Pioneer League, presented by Ticketing Smarter.
That's right, and I think you've seen a lot with these scores and offenses. The offenses kind of rule in the Pioneer League, and that's really what happened in this series. And I mean, 7 runs combined in the 7th and 8th inning for Grand Junction. It's certainly a tough one to swallow for Ogden, who had a 4-1 lead going into that 7th inning. But the bullpen's not as deep, and Grand Junction, credit to them, they battled back. Their offense exploded late, and they were able to get a big winner take all win on the road, to now face the wagon that is the Missoula Paddleheads.
Yeah, and I guess on that note, we have game 1 on Saturday, later today. That's 7:05 Mountain Time, which I believe is 9 o'clock in the East. If that helps you any. That's going to be the same time for games 2, and if necessary, game 3. It's only a best of 3 for their championship. Game 2 will be Monday in Missoula, I believe. Game 1, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be at Grand Junction. And then game 3 would be on Tuesday. So by Wednesday, this one will be all wrapped up and done. Do we see Grand Junction having a chance? Do they manage to push this one a full 3? Do they manage to even take the series from Missoula? Or is this just the kind of gift wrap it and hand the trophy back to Missoula for the 2nd straight year in a row?
Nah, give me Missoula in 2. I love them. I love me some Missoula Paddleheads. I think they'll win. They've shown the best team all year. I think they'll take care of business. They'll win in 2.
See, if you would have said Missoula in 1, then maybe they would have sent you that nice Timberjacks hat that we mentioned a couple of shows back.
True.
But I'm inclined to agree. I think it will go 3, though. I think Grand Junction has enough fight in them to at least take 1 game here. That being said, it's Missoula's trophy to lose at this point. I mean, they're just such a talented team and so well managed. It's hard to say, but good effort by first-year manager Bobby Jenks at the helm of the Grand Junction Rockies. And on that note,
regardless,
on that note too, can they change their name from Rockies? It's kind of weird to still have your MLB Parents Club name while you don't, in fact, have any sort of affiliation with them.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I do think they should change that just to move into the Indy Ball landscape permanently. Just kind of get a new identity away from affiliated ball. Yeah,
at the very least, change the colors from purple, black, and silver to something else, right? It would be nice. But yeah, so that's all we got on the Pioneer League. I know we run through them. We'll do a better job with it next year, I promise. But that's where they stand, and we will cover what happens there later on. In the Atlantic League, though, they have a best of 5 series for all of their series, and we know how everything goes. But before we talk about those matchups, which are set, they became set in stone on Thursday, can we talk about whether or not Courtney Hawkins is going to set the home run record? He has the weekend to do it. He is 2 back of, I believe it's Ozzie Canseco at 48. That's the record. Hawkins is at 46. He's got the genomes this week. and I believe he should be getting about 15 plate appearances, so he has a shot at it. He needs 2 to tie, 3 to set. I feel like he's got a decent shot, even if he has to hit 1 in every 5 at bats.
I am not inclined to bet against Courtney Hawkins hitting home runs at all. So I'm going to say he does it. Regardless, he's had just an unreal season. He has so much power, such a talented hitter. I think he does break it. I do. I think, and especially you get pitching that he's facing that are right towards the end of the season against another team in Wild Health that's not going to be making the playoffs. So, I think Hawkins is going to do it.
I'd be inclined to agree with that. I think it's going to be very cool seeing 2 records fall in the same season by the same team, really, too, because Darian Sanford got the steals record and he's on Lexington now. Same thing with Hawkins as a legend, too. Although it's going to kind of break my heart to see a Nork Bears record fall, but I almost want to see Hawkins get to 50. That'd be a cool number to leave it off at if he gets 50 home runs in one Atlantic League season. That'd be cool to see, but we're here for playoffs, so this is a playoffs episode. High Point clinched the final spot on Thursday night with a win. They're going to play Gastonia. They're going to start first 2 games are going to be at Gastonia. Last 3 games, if necessary, are going to be at High Point. Playoffs will start Tuesday the 20th. Game 1 will be on that 20th date, and Game 2 on the 21st. Game 3 will be on the 23rd, allowing 1 day for travel. Game 4 and 5, if necessary, will be on the 23rd. Game 3 on the 23rd. Game 4 will be on the 24th. For whatever reason, the league didn't bold the Saturday date on the website. I don't know why they didn't do that. And then Game 5 would be on Sunday the 25th. So next time we talk to you, we'll probably be doing a preview of sorts for the Atlantic League Championship, or at the very least breaking down what's happened in those semifinal games. On the flip side, Southern Maryland's going to be playing Lancaster for their shot at the championship belt. So it's 2 very good series there. The actual Atlantic League Championship Series will start Tuesday the 27th, and it can end as late as Sunday, October 2nd, but is only guaranteed to go through Friday the 30th. And it will start off with the North champion going to the South champion. So whoever wins, High Point or Gastonia, will host games 1 and 2 with the last 3 games, of course, 2 of those being, if necessary, hosted by whoever comes out of Lancaster and Southern Maryland. So before we even start concerning ourselves with that, what do we think of our 4 playoff teams and the matchups that we have?
Well, I think it's not a surprise, given I think really we are playing those spots are wrapped up with still a week left of games to play in the season. Not really a surprise as far as those teams. Gastonia far and away has been the best team in the Atlantic League all season. But I think that a series between them and High Point, I think High Point certainly has a chance just because they're both rivals. And I think Gastonia will end up winning that series. I think the really interesting one is between the Barnstormers and the Blue Crabs. I think a really evenly matched series there. But it almost kind of seems like the Blue Crabs have in the first half, they really dominated the Barnstormers, but, it's going to be really interesting, I think, in these 2 series. I'm going to pick Gastonia and the Blue Crabs. I think the Blue Crabs have so much familiarity with the Barnstormers as well. I think they're going to come out on top, and I'm not betting against Darryl Thompson in a playoff series. I want to see the Blue Crabs also get to a championship series because it's been, I think, since 15. I think was the last time they made it into the championship series, but it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
It's been a while because the Ducks have kind of just run the North Division, but I'm going to go with the Blue Crabs and Gastonia to make it.
Yeah, I'm going to look that up real quick just to see when the last time Southern Maryland made a championship game was. I believe the Patriots wound up dog walking them in the last time they made it. But that being said, I'll agree on Gastonia. I think Gastonia is just too good of a team. They're going to finish with both top 5 all-time Atlantic League wins in one season. They're already at 86. I believe they could get as high as 89 or 90. So that's certainly impressive there. And winning percentage, they're going to finish, I think it was third or fourth all time as well. So equally as impressive. They've just been a dynamo team. And it kind of seems silly that at one point this season, we were questioning as to whether or not they were legitimately a good team and if they were going to even, win the first half, and then could they keep it up in the second half. And ultimately, it does seem kind of silly we questioned it, but they pulled it out. So I agree with you. I think Gastoni's going to take it. I think they're going to take care of business in 4 games. As far as on the flip side, I like Lancaster a bit more. They're a hotter team, even if they are 13 games worse than the Blue Crabs are. I kind of want to see Lancaster make it. So I'm going to go Lancaster. I think it goes 5 games either way, but I do like the Barnstormers slightly more than they otherwise would. And you were right. 2015 was the last time they made the championship game.
Yeah, the only reason I know that I think is because Somerset was in that. Well, because Somerset was the one who beat him, and that was the last championship Somerset has had.
Yeah.
But I think that I think either way, I think these playoff series should be really fun, though. I can't wait for it.
Oh, absolutely. It definitely will be. So we'll give a more in-depth look next week once we actually have series taken care and taken place, I suppose. So be something to watch out for. We will have more postseason baseball to talk about next week. We will have championships wrapped up next week to talk about, and we'll have plenty more in the future. So on that note, we'll end this very long show, which, quite frankly, as of the time we're recording this, I'm not sure if you're going to get in your podcast feed, or if we're going to have to do some funky stuff with YouTube, or what the deal is actually going to be. I'm sure you will have seen a video I put up yesterday at this point, or I will hope you did, on the social medias explaining to some degree the situation at hand here. So with that, we'll go to the plugs, we'll get out of here, and we'll kind of let you get to the games later today. If you want to find the show, I really don't know where to tell you at this point, because that's part of our issue. But Apple and Spotify and Google are 3 pretty safe and reliable places. But the best way to know if the show comes out or when the show comes out, where to listen and everything like that, is to follow on the social media channels. That is on Twitter at Indy Ball Pod. The absolute best place to find us is Twitter. We're active on there. You get a lot of up-to-minute updates if there's an issue. And if we ever have to use YouTube as a backup option, that's the easiest place to find it and get the link tweeted out and sort out any sort of issue there if we have to do any sort of emergency uploading. That being said, you can also find out on Instagram at LPB_news and at Indy Ball Report. You could definitely find everything there. The website's normally up to date. However, we may have to do some renovation work depending on how the situation plays out. So you may not be able to get every episode right away, but definitely in the upcoming weeks, we'll be able to get everything back embedded there. So you can find the show notes though on there, and you can find some other stuff there as well. But, keep a weathered eye on the Twitter page. I really beg of you to watch the Twitter page, because that is going to be the best outlet for staying up to date as we kind of sort out all these issues. So, with that said, do you have anything else left to add?
One thing I have left to add, I quickly want to give a big shout out to Billy Pinkney with the Jackals, Billy the Bat Boy. He announced, I believe, a couple days ago when this comes out that this season with the Jackals was going to be his last. So whatever's next for him, he's incredibly talented. He's done so many things for both the Jackals and independent league baseball and minor league baseball as a whole. He's got an incredibly bright future. Can't wait to see what's next for him. And a friend of the show as well. So a big shout out to Billy. I cannot wait to see what's next for him.
Absolutely. Honestly, that's the biggest loss for this team going to Patterson. It's not getting Billy to stay on. I'm not sure how much of a factor. I think he said it really wasn't a factor, that he was planning on this being his last year with the team anyway. But he was always a fixture with the team, always a fixture there. He does quality work. Still follow him. And I mean, nothing but the best for that guy. He gets the job done. He gets great content done. So very, very much agree there. I thought this week I was going to be going on a rant because the Montreal Canadiens now have an ad on their sweater, which seems like such a sin to me on so many levels. And I'm kind of surprised the province is not on fire at the moment. But that said, don't really have too much to add. outside of a lot of stuff's happening, really, and I know I'm stressing this a lot, but keep following the social media. It's the best place to keep everything up to date while we go through a rather large transition period that hopefully by year's end I'll be able to explain with some detail, but as of right now I just kind of can't. So be sure to stay on the Twitter. That is the best spot to kind of follow along with everything. That's all I really have to add, because I really want to stress that point as of right now. So with that said, nothing else left to add. Enjoy the week of championship level baseball. And until next time, don't forget to play ball.